Happy Friday, everybody. This is Joel from MaravillaNayarit.com. Bienvenidos a nuestro canal. And bienvenidos to La Casa de la Familia Goralski. It is Friday afternoon here in Mexico. And man, I'm just reading some of the headlines out there, hearing some of the news, seeing stuff on YouTube. Are Canadians fleeing Canada in droves? They are fleeing Canada in droves, actually. And it is kind of crazy. At the same time, you're seeing kind of like this massive influx of immigration, but not necessarily the quality of immigrants that Canada is really looking to attract, like that are readily going to show up and start contributing to the economy and contributing to society. A matter of fact, long-standing Canadians, people born and raised, are leaving, and the biggest trend right now are people who have moved from other countries to come to Canada for a better life are starting to second-guess that decision. You know, in the past, like Canada has really been seen as a land of opportunity, really. It's a haven for immigrants seeking a better life. Me, myself, I wasn't an immigrant, but I came from family of immigrants that originally immigrated from Poland and Ukraine, and you know, not necessarily had the easiest life coming to the country back in those days. But you know, they got some land. They did not have much. They came literally with the clothes on their back and a few dollars in their pockets. So, I mean, that's literally the history of most of us. But, you know, the new immigrants to Canada are starting to have second thoughts, and they're starting to leave. And, you know, the second question I have is, you know, what's happening with the Canadian currency? You know, so we have this kind of like perfect storm. We have people fleeing Canada, and we have what I think is the Canadian currency on the brink of collapse, and that could be next. So let's dive into some of the reasons behind the mass exodus, like who are the people that are leaving and who's actually driving them away. Let's first talk about immigrants. Like I kind of like started on, like many came to Canada with the dreams of a better life, just like my forefathers, my great-grandparents and my grandparents came to Canada for a dream, you know, with the dream of a better life. But the people that are coming today are actually finding that in reality, it's much tougher to live in Canada, and maybe that better life that Canada sold them isn't so much a reality. Rampant inflation is literally eating away at their savings, and right now there's really poor job selections in the market, and it's becoming more and more difficult for them to sustain their families. You know, like looking at some stats here, I'm just bringing it up. In 2023, Canada's inflation rate hit a staggering 6.3%, and that's what they have on the books, people. So that's not the real inflation rate. And if you talk to anyone in Canada, and if you're Canadian, you can take a look yourself. You know that the inflation in Canada is well beyond 6.3%. You know, but that's what let's call it the fake inflation numbers that the government gives us to make us try to feel better. It's like, you know, they want us to believe that lie and, you know, get us feeling that maybe it's not so bad. But even at 6.3%, which is the reported fake inflation number, it's one of the highest amongst the developed countries. And the cost of living, especially in major centers like Toronto and Vancouver, has really skyrocketed. Anyone that I've talked to from those cities they're blown away about the cost of living and the cost of housing. And for some people that already owned homes in the past, yeah, good for them. I mean, they're kind of up, but at the same time, inflation is eating away at a lot of those gains. And with higher interest rates comes higher interest costs. And you know, is it kind of evening out, or are you actually losing? So, you know, with those housing prices becoming more and more unaffordable, and even bare necessities, such as just food and clothing becoming more expensive, is really starting to ring those alarm bells for people who, you know, made that decision to move to Canada. And so essentially for many of those immigrants, the promise of a better life, really, it's just fading. They're making the tough decision now, because making a decision to actually move to a new country is not necessarily easy. So now they're making the tough decision to move back to their home country, where the costs are dramatically lower, and their savings, or everything they earned in Canada, can now be returned with them, and can go further in that original country. But then think about what I originally said when I started the video, and I was going to say it's funny, but it's not funny. But it's interesting to see that it's not just immigrants who are leaving. Natural Canadians, so people who are born and raised there, are leaving in droves. And it's not just people my age, it's a lot younger people. So people who are professional, have good jobs. The rise of remote work has allowed them right now to basically live anywhere in the world if they have a remote job opportunity. So they start saying to themselves, like, why stay in an expensive city when I can work from a beach in Mexico or a quaint little village in Eastern Europe? I mean, it's kind of, and then everything in between, including Southeast Asia. When I'm talking to people, and they are, probably in the last 3 years ago, we really saw this big influx into Mexico, but more and more younger people that I'm talking to are even looking beyond the Mexico box. Obviously, I'm a proponent of Mexico. I'd love to see more and more people move here, but they're looking at places like Thailand, Malaysia, Poland. I've heard Polish, people moving to Poland who have no Polish in them, but they love the country and the cost of living. Bulgaria is another one. I would have never thought about moving to Bulgaria, but people are actually moving to Bulgaria because Bulgaria's doors are open for business, and you can save a lot of money by living in a country like Bulgaria. And you would think maybe Bulgaria is not the kind of place I want to live, but do a search online, look into Google, and you'll see that Bulgaria looks pretty darn cool. Low crime rate, low cost of living, beautiful homes, lots of old, awesome architecture. You could live inner city for a fraction of the cost of living in a place like downtown Toronto or Vancouver. Another big driver forcing people out of Canada are the declining job opportunities. And the Canadian job market is becoming increasingly competitive, and it's going to continue to become more and more competitive. And many need at this point, just because their savings are deteriorating, their ability to purchase things are deteriorating. They have to find a better paying job, and those better paying jobs aren't out there. So you kind of just couple these non-existing better paying jobs with rampant inflation, and everyone's purchasing power is just declining very, very rapidly. I'm looking at another stat here. In 2023, the real wages in Canada fell by 2.5%, over 2.5%, while the cost of essential goods rose by over 7%. Again, that 7% is the fake number, and the 2.5% could be a fake number as well. Maybe it's closer to 5. We don't know for a fact. Usually the government likes to pad those numbers, but all we know is there's an imbalance, and that imbalance is another one of the reasons is pushing people to look for other opportunities abroad. And then what else do we have in Canada? What else is kind of going on there in other Western nations? Well, there's the political and social climate. We have the rise of woke political ideology, and it's starting to drive traditional thinkers away. I run into more and more people here in Mexico on my tours, more and more people who are staying in our vacation rentals, and I hear a lot about it. It's something that people don't want to necessarily talk about online because they're fearful of the actual woke mob canceling them. But in private, many Canadians are just fed up. These traditional thinkers are fed up with the woke ideology, and it's pushing them away. And, go back to COVID. They're having the memories of the strict COVID-19 lockdowns, the government-imposed curfews, especially in Quebec. It was insane. It was almost like a military state. And then you have peaceful people protesting, and you have people deciding to donate money to that protest. And the government says, "Hey, you can't do that. We're gonna seize your bank account." Like, that should be an alarm bell for everyone. no matter what you believed, if you were not on the side of those who are protesting, that's fine. That's your right. But to see your government step in and seize people's bank accounts because they decided to contribute to a cause and almost putting them in the same place as a terrorist, you got to give your head a shake and you got to start thinking about that. And there's a lot of people, and call them your traditional thinkers, they're like, our government's gone too far and I have to look for an exit strategy. So literally they have a bitter taste in their mouth, and this distrust of government is forcing good Canadians to leave our country, leave the country permanently, and take their savings and their money and their knowledge, their skill set, either back to where they came from, or traditional Canadians like myself and many others who are just deciding, enough is enough. Maybe I'm going to leave Canada for good. Going to another stat here, a recent poll, and this just kind of like reinforces what I've just spoken about, indicated that over 40% of Canadians feel that the government has too much control over their life. That's 40%. That's a big number. It's not just 10%. These people aren't just fringe, right? Like we've always heard this thing, fringe. These Canadians who are on the fringe. Well, there's 40% of Canadians think that government that talks about this fringe has way too much control over their life. So what does that lead to? Well, this sentiment leads many to seek other countries where maybe the government isn't so controlling, where there is a lot more freedom. In Mexico, for one, I can say, I don't know enough about the politics here. I try to completely stay out of it. But generally speaking, we have this incredible degree of freedom here, right? That not that we can do what we want, but we have a lot more freedom to do what we want here, it seems. And I, for one, love that thing about Mexico, and I'm embracing it for as long as it exists, and hopefully it'll continue to exist for a long, long time. Now, one of the other headlines in this video was, is Canada on the brink of a currency collapse? And I say yes. Again, this is not financial advice. You may not believe in my thesis, and that's fine. You can argue a counterpoint to it. But I think Canada is at the point where we have to consider that, going the way of the Turkish Lira is not something that is potentially off the table right now. And why is that? Okay. So, there's many reasons behind it, but I think one of the first things we have to I gotta retract here a little bit, but in Canada, and me, myself included, we have this degree of comfort, right? We see ourselves as this developed nation, and nothing like that could ever happen to us, right? Nothing like a Turkish Lira collapse could ever happen in Canada. And we're really, really comfortable, right? It's like we're sleeping. And that is actually it could be one of the factors that could help propel the Canadian dollar to this collapse, is because we're not expecting it. But let's take a look at Turkey and the collapse of the Turkish lira over the past several years. You look at that, it happened. There's various reasons why it happened. Had a lot to do with Turkey's monetary policy and just printing a shitload of money and not raising interest rates when they were supposed to raise them, okay? That's for a whole nother video. But if you look at what's happening globally, the entire financial system is under a huge strain, and we are coming to an end of that easy money, people. Okay, all of us in my age bracket and my parents, we all got wealthy. We got our wealth because of easy monetary policy, man. Interest rates were so cheap, and they have been cheap for years. And that's how we got our wealth. It's not because we're smart. Okay, there's a lot more people smarter than a lot of us, and they got their wealth because, of cheap monetary policy, but they're also maybe a little bit more astute and smart. But for your average bear, we're not that smart, okay? We just got wealthy because of cheap money, allowed us to buy our real estate, allowed us to leverage that cheap money into the stock market. All that liquidity has just built this huge bubble, and we got this wealth. But now, here's the thing. We got to figure out a way to keep it, and don't let it slip away because you've spent all these years building that wealth, building that retirement nest egg, and you don't want it to go away. Now, there are going to be, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, there's going to be currencies that are going to revalue. Okay, mark my word. And it's the legacy currencies, okay? It's the legacy currencies, the euro, the Canadian dollar, the US dollar, that are all potentially, not even potentially, it's going to happen. They all are going to go through a re-evaluation. Okay, and you have the US dollar, and so let's just take a look at North America, because North America is close to us, right? So we have Canada, we have the United States, and we have Mexico, okay? The US dollar is the strongest currency. It's the global currency. Everyone says the US dollar is imminently going to collapse. No, it's not. Okay, it's not going to imminently collapse because there's too many countries and too many people that depend on it. But that doesn't mean it's not ever going to collapse. It's going to collapse. It's going to go through a reevaluation, but it's probably going to be the last one to do it. Okay, it's going to be the last man standing, so to speak. So then what happens? An economic war, where are they going to attack first? Okay, so let's look at the Mexican peso. Well, you know what? Mexico's got its shit together right now. Okay, its debt to GDP is at record lows. Okay, its monetary policy has always been tight. High interest rates, right? Not a flood of money printing. And they've got all this inflow of investment. Okay, we're talking major inflow of investment into Mexico that is not only propping up the economy, but setting the stage for this long-term super economic cycle that I've been talking about in past videos, okay? So let's take a look at Canada. So that kind of leaves Canada as the easy target, okay? An easy target for what? Well, an attack on its currency. Okay, this is war, people. Like, it's economic war. People, like, it's a chess game, right? Like, everyone's fighting to sustain their wealth, okay? And Canada is in a position right now that I think it's going to lose the battle. And I think if there is going to be an attack on a Western currency in North America, well, Canada's it's the easy target. It's going to be the first one. And I think it could go by the way of the Turkish Lira. And take a look at the Turkish Lira and look at it over the last 4 or 5 years, and you could see that that could be devastating. So as this trend continues, it could lead to a domino effect, okay? So we see the Canadian dollar devalue, maybe in the short or the medium term, and I'm maybe going to bring up a chart because it's just going to be a little easier for me to present this. I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me. Let's see, share screen. Okay, I'm going to just share this chart really quickly here, guys. Okay, so here is the Canadian dollar, and I'm looking at the weekly, okay? So I'm going to go back to the pivot high of the US dollar, which was in March 2020, okay? So that would be, we'll call it the pivot low of the Canadian dollar, okay? So that's when the markets got hit. Everyone rushed into US dollars, so that's going to happen again. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when people tell you, oh, you know, this time's different, no, it isn't. There's never a different time. These times are not different. They're always the same. You can go back 100 years and the times are not different. Stuff like this plays out all the same. The only difference now is we could be, well, it's not even we could be, we are coming to the end of a financial system, right? And there's going to be a last man standing. So who's that man, right? Well, the U.S. is going to be one of the last men standing. We can guarantee that. I think we can all agree on that. So let's see what happened here. The Canadian dollar got beat right up, and then it rallied with all that liquidity, okay? Kind of came back into parity where it once was with the U.S. dollar, kind of call it $1.20, which is kind of a nice sweet spot for the Canadian dollar. Maybe a little too strong, but not intensely strong, okay? Like back in the day when we had $150 oil prices, I think back in 2007, 2008, there was at one time the Canadian dollar was higher than US dollar. It was almost like a big sense of national pride, but that was pretty short-lived. That probably should have happened, but because of policy of the federal government to essentially completely destroy the Canadian oil industry, we did not have that same effect in these last several years. But anyways, so let's follow this trend. This trend is up on the US dollar, okay? And this trend is down on the US dollar, or the Canadian dollar, because if I flipped it around the Canadian chart, it would just be reverse. Okay, so we kind of hit this pivot low. We're kind of now back to this area where there was strong resistance over the course of many years, all right? And from a textbook chart reading technical analysis, this is a massive long-term head and shoulders. And if it plays out, okay, you got this kind of shoulder here, these big shoulders, and you got this head down here. And how you measure a head and shoulders, and this doesn't mean this is exactly how it's going to play out, but hey, everyone of the market participants right now are looking at these charts. So this is one of the leading patterns that, you know, could potentially play out. And what you do is you take kind of from the neckline down to the tip of the head, and then you draw this line, which I just did, and then you see where that kind of goes. So that takes the Canadian dollar, kind of this $1.65, and I already have this number here at about $1.60. I think that's where the Canadian dollar is headed in the next 18 months or less. But the other thing you can look at here that kind of like supports it is it's gotten through this resistance line. It's punched through a few times and keeps getting rejected. Came back up again here, got rejected. Punched back through, got rejected. But really, what is it getting rejected to? It's kind of getting rejected to a mean, and it's kind of getting rejected to, let me just see if I can, you know, it's getting rejected and forming this channel. And this channel is, you know, we had a low here, we had a higher low here, and now we're having another higher low. If it breaks out over this line, you could be rest assured that the Canadian dollar is marching up to that $1.45, $1.50. And if it starts finding some comfort there, and we see more turmoil in the markets, you got your Canadian dollar heading to that $1.60, $1.65. Now, if it hits that point, and we still continue to see economic turmoil, I'm going to just turn my screen off here, but you could start seeing, you know, the Turkish, hold on, because I got the camera in front of my screen here, but I'm going to bring up the Turkish Lira really quick. US dollar to Turkish Lira. Let's have a look-see-loo at that, okay? So this is the weekly on that. Okay, so, okay, what happened here? Oh, invalid symbol. I think I just put my, hold on, guys. I put my camera on my keyboard, and that is not going to work, right? So let me see if I can set this up so it doesn't do that again. All right. Okay, boy, oh boy, I'm not getting this thing right. This is like kind of probably one of the worst share screens in the world. So let me see if I can. Oh, now I just completely. Right. So I'm frozen now. So there's me all nice and frozen. We'll see what happens with this thing. All right, gonna flip over here to the Turkish Lira, and next time I'm not going to try to put my camera on my keyboard. Okay, U.S. dollar, Turkish Lira. Let's take a look at the weekly on that. Okay, you see it back here in 2018, kind of had a little devaluation, but then it's kind of interesting. In 2020, it, you know, just like everything else, and then it started to gain some strength. And this is where Turkey really kind of shit the bed. And, you know, they were 6.86. I call it $7 to the US dollar, and now at 32. Okay. So let's just say the Canadian dollar, okay, the Canadian dollar goes to $6, $6 US dollars, meaning you have to pay 6 Canadian dollars to get 1 US dollar. Man, that's no bueno. And could that happen? Absolutely. See that $1.60? That right there, my friends, is where the US dollar wants to head. And it's going to hit some resistance there. It's not going to blow through that. But if it gets above there and we see economic turmoil, you could start seeing all these numbers up here. You know, you can see this number 6. Okay, $6.15. I'm just going to leave that there forever. And we'll see if the Canadian dollar gets there. And again, that's not happening tomorrow, but that could happen over the next several years. And man, you're going to see all your savings completely erode. So you got to protect yourself. And a lot of smart people are kind of seeing the writing on the wall right now. So they know that they got to start protecting themselves. And it's one of the reasons why they're seriously considering moving out of Canada back to their home country, or natural-born Canadians like myself are just saying, you know what, I'm taking all my money, I'm taking all my Canadian play money, I'm selling everything, and I'm moving, and I'm going to invest in another country that is going to treat me better, where I have more opportunity, and where I do not have this economic risk. So yeah, so while a full-blown currency collapse, I think in the end, you might say, hey, Joel, that's extreme, okay? But the signs of economic strain are really undeniable. So I just want to leave you with that. And experts do warn, okay, that Canada could face serious economic repercussions without significant policy changes. And even if, let's say, the Conservatives get elected, I mean, there's only so much those guys can do, okay, to try to stop a freight train that is just running down the tracks to a broken track into a cement wall, okay? It's going to be tough for Canada to get out of this situation without major austerity moves, okay? So like hiking interest rates, changing pension plans, like really, getting a bailout from the World Bank, like all those things that have happened to countries like Greece and Turkey before could be happening to Canada. So it really is a risk, and you cannot take it lightly. So as we see more and more people fleeing Canada, the question remains, okay, what does it hold for this once promising nation? I mean, I'm a proud Canadian, and it makes me sad. And I just wonder, will the exodus lead to a tipping point, for the Canadian economy, along with all this other economic strain, attack on the currency? Like, will this just be the death knell for our beloved country? So that's the question I leave you for, and I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer or a doom and gloomer, but I'm just trying to bring the reality of this situation of our beautiful country. So I thank you for watching, and if you find this video insightful, if you like it, don't forget to like it, okay? So if you like it, actually like it, hit that thumbs up. Please share it with all your friends and family, and subscribe. You got to hit that subscribe button and toggle the notification bell so you can continue to get my in-depth analysis on trends globally, trends in Mexico, more on the Narco Picnic podcast, and more on just our fun videos. I mean, we're just taking this channel this year to a whole new level of just as much entertainment and as much information as possible. And I want you guys to enjoy it as much as you can. So on that note, everybody, nos vemos. Hasta luego and adiós. Desde Bucerías, México, y la casa de la familia Goralski. And here's a little cheerful music for y'all. After all that doom and gloom, let's feel good. And it's Friday, so I'm gonna make myself a margarita. Saludos, everybody. Ay, ay, ay.